So imagine you live in a city where getting your arms replaced with rocket launchers is just another Tuesday. Now imagine that sometimes those rocket launcher arms make people go absolutely feral, start talking to walls, and decide that jaywalking is a crime punishable by death. That, my friends, is Night City, baby. Cyberpsychos are what happens when people shove so many cybernetic implants into their bodies that their brains go, hey, this isn't normal, and then just completely check out. It's like when you pull out an all-nighter and start hallucinating that your fridge is talking to you, asking you to subscribe to Sophie Rain's OnlyFans. But before we do that, you need to subscribe, please. I'm just begging at this point. Alright, first up, we have Lely Hein, who is basically what happens when a guy gets a little too into his Terminator cosplay. He's chilling over in Santo Domingo, just vibing in an abandoned building like some kind of horror movie villain. This guy has cyberware coming out of his goddamn ears, but unfortunately, no amount of upgrades can fix bad decision-making skills. Before he turned into a cyberpsycho, Lely was actually living the corporal dream, or at least the corporal illusion. He worked for a mid-tier security firm, the kind that pretends to care about employee well-being while simultaneously bleeding them. Why the fuck can't I say bleeding? Why simultaneously bleeding them dry? He had a cushy paycheck, a decent apartment, and a clear path up the corporate ladder. The only problem, the higher you climb in Night City, the sharper the knives at your back. Lely started augmenting himself to stay competitive, upgrading his reflexes, boosting his strength, and eventually installing a Mantis Blade system. Because nothing says Employee of the Month like being able to eviscerate your co-workers. But corpos don't care about loyalty, just results. One day his company decided he was expendable, threw him under the bus and left him jobless, drowning in cyberware debt. And that's when things got a bit messy. With no job, no prospects, and a nervous system overloaded with enhancements, Lely snapped. He disappeared from corporal life, resurfacing later as a cyberpsycho terrorizing the streets. The dude's got some decent reflex boosters, which means he's fast, but unfortunately for him, not fast enough to dodge bullet. He ranks lowest on our list because honestly, he's just not that big of a deal. Yeah, he's dangerous, but in the same way a guy with a knife is dangerous, it's scary if you're unarmed, but if you've got a gun, it's not exactly a fair fight. Next up, we have Ellis Carter, a man who took one too many special supplements and decided laws were just polite suggestions. Ellis was living in the Pacific Combat Zone, which is already like playing life on hard mode. He had a rough history, addicted to black market stimulants, always looking for his next fix, and probably one day away from deciding that eating bullets was a nutritional necessity. His cyberware included Kerenzikov reflex boosters, meaning he could dodge like he was starring in his very own personal action movie. The problem? Ellis had the intelligence of a concussed pigeon. Instead of using his implants for something productive, like not dying, he just went on a full-blown violent rampage, attacking anyone who got a bit too close to him. Taking him down wasn't exactly a challenge. His cyberware made him fast, but fast doesn't mean smart. And that's why he ranks so low. Dangerous, sure, but in this guy is a problem for about 30 seconds kind of way. Zaria Hughes is proof that burnout is real, and sometimes instead of taking a vacation, people just snap and start committing murder. She was a net runner, which in Night City means she spent 90% of her life jacked into cyberspace and the other 10% recovering from crippling migraines. Her employer? Some corpo scumbags who worked her to the bone, and instead of a raise, they probably just offered thoughts and praise. Eventually her brain said, you know what, I'm fucking done, and she went cyberpsycho. Unlike most of the other cyberpsychos on this list, Zaria didn't rely on brute force. She was a hacker, which means she could fry your cyberware before you even realized she was dead. If she had plantings better, she might have been a real nightmare, but instead she just went feral in a random warehouse and got herself put down like a malfunctioning Roomba. To be honest, me and Zaria have one thing in common, and is that we both run purely on rage and we don't last very long. Lieutenant Mauer is special because she's one of the rare cyberpsychos who don't think that they're a cyberpsycho. In her mind, she's still a loyal NCPD officer, keeping the streets clean by, violently attacking civilians for just existing. You can see how that might be a bit of a problem. Mauer used to be part of an elite force unit decked out with high-end cyberware to make her stronger, faster, and just generally more terrifying. The issue was somewhere along the way, her mental firmware got corrupted, and she started treating innocent people like gang members. Her implants included reinforced subdermal armor and enhanced optics, which meant she could take a ridiculous amount of punishment and still track you like a heat-seeking missile. In another life, she might have been an actual hero. Instead, she turned into just another Night City horror story, gunning down people who weren't even a threat. Mara ranks low because she's definitely tougher than some of the other psychos, but she still went down like all the rest. That is what happens when you take a wannabe street samurai, load him up with implants, and let him completely lose his grip on reality. He was a merc who worked gigs across the city, slowly upgrading himself for every eddy he earned. Unfortunately though, he didn't realize that there's a fine line between enhanced warrior and brain-fried lunatic. Matt got himself some high-end cyberware including optical camo, which let him turn invisible like some kind of bootleg predator. That sounds terrifying until you realize that just because someone can't see you doesn't mean they can't hear you charging at them while screaming like a maniac. Yeah, sure, he was dangerous, but he wasn't exactly a genius at it. The smartest cyberpsycho might have used his stealth implants for tactical ambushes. Matt just ran at people hoping they'd be too scared to react. Turns out bullets don't actually care if you're invisible or not. Alec Johnson is what happens when you take a gym bro, swap out all his muscle for cybernetics, and then forget to install a brain. This guy was a street level enforcer, meaning his entire job was beating the fuck out of people who owed money. He was basically a collection agent, but instead of calling you to remind you about your overdue payments, he just broke your leg and your dick. Alec's cyberware included reinforced cyber arms, meaning his punches hit like freight trains. But here's the thing, being strong is great and all, but you still need tactics. Turns out brute force alone doesn't mean much when you're too dumb to dodge bullets. He ranks here because while he was physically dangerous, he had the strategic intelligence of a wet sock. Ben was one of those guys who probably thought he was the protagonist of his very own Cyberpunk anime. Bro is not David Martinez. He lived off the grid, worked as a merc, and spent way too much time brooding in the alleyways. His whole thing was that he didn't trust anyone, but because he knew his brain was being held together by duct tape and bad decisions. His cyberware included a high-end Sandovistan, meaning he could literally move at ridiculous speeds and slash through enemies before they even know what hit them. The problem, he had absolutely no restraint. One day he just stopped taking contracts and started cutting down anyone who got a bit too close. I mean, while his speed made him a pain in the ass to deal with, he wasn't exactly unpredictable. Once you knew how he fought, it was just a matter of waiting for him to burn out, because even a cyberpsycho has his limits. Diego Ramirez was built like a tank, literally. This guy was ex-military, which meant he knew exactly how to kill people before he decided to install enough cyberware to make himself borderline indestructible. He had dermal armor, reinforced bones, and an internal pain editor, meaning he could take an absurd amount of damage and just keep going. The problem was though, Diego's brain also decided to check out. One day he stopped taking orders, snapped, and started treating the city like his personal war zone. He wasn't fast, but he didn't need to be. He just walked through gunfire like it was a minor inconvenience. Diego ranks here because his sheer durability made him a nightmare to deal with. You couldn't just shoot him and call it a day. You had to really work to put him down. Alma was just another ex-soldier. But unlike Diego, his cyberpsychosis was less about rage and more about pure paranoia. After leaving the military, he struggled to reintegrate into normal life, constantly thinking he was being watched, hunted, or betrayed. And in Night City, let's be honest, that's not an unreasonable fear. His implants were all designed for survival. Optical enhancements for tracking enemies, subdermal armor for tanking hits, and the reflex booster that made him incredibly fast in combat. The issue was though, his paranoia completely took over him. He started seeing enemies where there were none and ended up attacking innocent people, thinking they were out to get him. While his skills made him a serious threat, his paranoia also made him erratic. If he had been a little bit more stable, he might have been higher on the list. Zion Wild was a problem. This guy was a professional killer, trying to take out high-value targets with maximum efficiency. Then one day, he just stopped caring about who he was targeting and started going after everyone. His cyberware included an advanced cyber limb system, enhanced muscle fibers, and a targeting system that made him absurdly accurate. Unlike most cyberpsychos, he didn't just lose his mind and start flailing. He kept his combat training, which meant he was still an elite level assassin, just without a moral compass. Unlike some of the other psychos who just relied on brute force, Zion was a bit calculated, which made him way harder to deal with. Russell Green wasn't just a cyberpsycho, he was a hunter. This guy didn't just attack random people, he picked targets and hunted them down, literally. That alone makes him worse than most of other people's on this list. Most of other people's? What the fuck am I saying? Worse than most people on the list. But before snapping, Russell was a bounty hunter specializing in tracking down fugitives. He had an array of cyberware built specifically for tracking, enhanced optics, neural scanners, and stealth augmentations. The problem though was that one day he decided that everyone was a fugitive. Yeah, that level of focus and planning makes him way scarier than your average rampaging lunatic. Now before we get to the worst of the worst, these are the real nightmares of Night City. If you made it this far, you're clearly enjoying watching me explain Night City's worst cases like a drunk historian. So do me a favor and fucking subscribe. It costs you nothing and I'm literally on my knees right now begging you. Tamara Cosby is one of the few cyberpsychos who wasn't some ex-merc, soldier or corporate experiment gone wrong. She was just a regular person who got pushed past her breaking point. She lived in Rancho Coronado, had a family and worked a normal job. Then one day, something snapped and she turned into a literal horror movie villain. Her cyberware wasn't even that extreme, just enhanced muscle fibers and reinforced bones. But the way she used them, terrifying. She didn't just attack people, she stalked them, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She was fast, brutal, and completely unhinged. And she ranks this high because there's nothing scarier than a normal person who suddenly turns into a monster. I can tell you that when I got my mom angry once when she caught me using a credit card to subscribe to Sophie Rain's OnlyFans. I don't know why this is the second time this is coming up here, but it's definitely just a joke, guys. Trust me. At least with the other cyberpsychos, you could see the danger coming. Tamara, she became the danger. Chase Corey is what happens when you take an already unstable street thug, strap as much cyberware onto him as possible, and then act surprised when he turns into an unkillable murder machine. He was part of a gang, ran jobs, and generally made life worse for everyone around him. Then he overloaded himself with implants, lost what little grip he had on reality, and started killing everything in sight. His cyberware included an absurd amount of muscle enhancements, making him way stronger than a normal human being. He also had a pain editor, which meant he could literally not feel any damage, allowing him to keep fighting even after taking shots that should have put him down. He was one of those cyberpsychos where the best strategy was not fighting him at all, just running and hoping that he didn't catch you. Cedric Muller, no not that Muller, was built for combat. Before he went cyberpsycho, he was a top tier solo, the kind of merc corpos paid a lot of money to make their problems disappear. He was already dangerous before the implants, and after them, he was basically a one-man army. Cedric's cyberware included reinforced skeletal structure, reflex boosters, and an advanced targeting system. He didn't just attack, he calculated. Even in his cyberpsycho state, he fought with precision, which is honestly worse than just a mindless rampage. He ranks this high because he wasn't just another mindless killer. He was still a professional even after losing his mind. A cyberpsycho with skill and training, now that's serious nightmare fuel. Norio Akuhara wasn't just a cyberpsycho, he was a myth. Unlike most of the others who just went loud and started killing at random, Norio disappeared. He used his cyberware, high-end optical camo, and cybernetic silencers to move completely undetected, striking from the shadows and vanishing before anyone could react. Most cyberpsychos get caught because they want to be caught. They make noise, draw attention, and go out in a blaze of glory. Norio, on the other hand, he wanted to stay hidden. That alone makes him 10 times scarier than the rest on the list. He ranks this high because being attacked by a guy you can't even see is way worse than facing a brute. You can't prepare for brute force, but you can't prepare for an invisible assassin. Dudu Hyun, that's not actually how it's pronounced, was an ex-military, which already made him more dangerous than half the people on this list. He wasn't just in the military, he was one of the best. The problem though, turns out turning elite soldiers into cybernetic superhumans might have some side effects. Dudu had everything, them reflex boosters, a high-end targeting system, and a paint editor. He didn't fight like a cyberpsycho, he fought like a soldier, a really overpowered soldier. He ranks this high because even at his most insane, he was still highly tactical. He wasn't just attacking randomly, he was strategic, making him one of the worst possible people to a cyberpsycho. Finally, number 1 on the list, we have Mr. Beast, Gaston Phillips, aka the worst case scenario. Gaston was a mercenary, already skilled in combat, but then he started modifying himself. One implant turned into two, two into three, and suddenly he was more machine than man. Eventually, his brain gave up, and Gaston stopped being human completely. His cyberware was insane. Optical enhancements, reinforced limbs, subdermal armor, strength, speed, endurance, skill. He had all of it, making him by far the worst nightmare Night City had to offer. Now, a lot of people are probably going to say, oh, what about Adam Smasher? Why didn't I mention Adam Smasher? Well, I think the case for Adam Smasher is he is a cyberpsycho, but in the sense that he still retains his mental capabilities. I don't know how to put it into words, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the absolute worst cyberpsychos running around Night City, ranked from mildly annoying to please uninstall life. The scary part, these are just some of the cyberpsychos running around. Every day, some poor bastard slaps on one too many implants and turns into another walking disaster. And if you ever find yourself thinking, hey, maybe I should install some experimental black market cyberware, just remember, this list exists for a reason. Now, if you enjoyed watching me roast unhinged murder machines, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into Night City's chaos. And if you really did like it, drop a comment telling me which cyberpsycho you think would be the absolute worst to fight. I'll be in the comments avoiding cyberpsychosis by arguing with strangers. Catch you next time, and try not to get cyberpsycho. This is the part where I beg you to subscribe, by the way. I know it looks like I just did a few moments ago, but I'm begging. I'm just trying to draw the video out to 19 minutes. I know I'm even saying this, but I'm begging, bro, please fucking subscribe. I'm trying to reach 500 subscribers by the end of the month. Yeah, I know it seems like an impossible goal, but I'm begging you, bro, please. I'm on my knee. Okay, that's enough begging now. Ta-ta.